This section is called STF Model Overview. So in this tutorial, what we're going to do is go over the parts of the short-term forecaster model and describe generally the parts, how they work, and then how they all fit together. But most of what's going to be talked about in this tutorial will be covered in greater detail in separate tutorials that go into much more detail about each of those parts in the model. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to open a short-term forecaster model. And these are rather large Excel files. There's also a code add-in file that, if it's placed in the same folder as the STF file, when it's opened, when the STF file is opened, the code add-in will be opened automatically. But anywhere you get a prompt from Excel asking you if you want to enable macros or enable content, answer it in the positive so that the model can function properly. Okay, so we're just going to go over the basic sections within the model. So when you open a model, it goes to the Welcome tab, and this tells you what the model's for, what version it is, when it was last saved, and by whom. So let's go to the next tab, which is called Control. So here's where, if we had new data to enter, we would use these buttons, primarily buttons 1 and 2. Button 1 is to enter data, to read data from the data repository, and button 2 is to generate trends. Button 0, which is optional, is to save some of the forecast results to compare against the new forecast. And then button 3 is if you want to run a Monte Carlo simulation. On the top right, we have a color key which shows the different types of quantities and different calculation values within the model. And what we tried to do is keep everything separate, so you can just look at the coloring for the spreadsheet cells and see what is actually being forecasted or calculated in that area. Below that is some settings for sensitivity results, which we'll talk about in more detail later. And then below that is we have some of the key worksheets. We have a hyperlink that goes to that worksheet, a description of it, and then to the right of that is some of the model inputs with the description next to them, and then also a color coding which matches what's up above. And then below that we have types of inputs and a description for them. Okay, the next tab over is called Inputs. And this tab shows all the inputs other than just the raw data and the trends that come from it. So just quickly, we have some reference prices and compliance, which can help us estimate patients. We have price changes, discount rate changes, trend uncertainty, inventory uncertainty, new competitors, and then below that we have events. And events are things that positively or negatively affect a product, either one product or a number of products. And you can say if that event is cannibalizing another product, or if it has a halo effect, it's actually helping another product. And then below that, we have a section that shows if overrides are placed in the model. And if they are, the value is labeled as true. If they aren't, it's false. And then to the right of that, we have hyperlinks where you can go and find the part of the model that has those overrides. There's a gray bar, a gray row above each one of the sections. And if any changes are made in that section, in column I, there's a time, date, and person stamp that if anything is changed in that area, that will change to today's date and time, and then the person who makes that change. this can be used later for version control. Okay, so the tabs are also color-coded. The two inputs tabs are yellow, so control and inputs. And then we go into the dark green tabs. These are summaries. We have an annual summary, a quarterly summary, a monthly summary, a pricing summary, and then a custom summary, which is, it's already got the months in there, and we could build it to be any summary that the forecaster wants. And then the very last dark green tab is the Monte Carlo results. These are updated whenever a Monte Carlo simulation is run. And now we enter a section of light gray tabs, and these are where all the calculations for the model, most of the calculations are done. So we have the history plus trend base market, we have TRX base market, adjusted trend final market. So the first two tabs are for the base market, which just includes the trends but no new events. The final market, the tab we're on right now, includes the trends and the new events. Then we have a retail non-retail tab, the demand factors tab, the free of charge units tab, the revenue tab, and again this is for the base market. And then we have where competition is calculated. This is where new products, the effect of new products is added in. And then we have the events tab. This is where the new events are added in. Then we have a patients tab where we estimate the number of patients on each product. And then we have a tab called curves. And here is where we have both the new competitor adoption or uptake curves and then the event curves. And these are user settable, so they could be parameterized, such as a linear 5-year curve, or they could be based on an analog or a set of analogs. And then we have what's called the dynamic chart data tabs, and one is month short, one is quarter, and one is month long. And these are intermediate tabs, so that if we want to change the time scale on a graph, we can just change it here, as opposed to going into the chart and changing every time series separately. Okay, now we go into the lighter green tabs, and these are for output charts. So we have the company raw trend chart, we have the total raw trend chart, the competitor raw trend chart, the submarket raw trend chart, the all raw trend chart, the all adjusted, so this is for the final market, trend chart. And then for all of the products we have milligrams per prescription. So these are the demand factors that we're going to talk about in more detail later. So we have that for product A, and we have it for product B. So those are kind of the combined demand factors, and then we have the demand factors by component. And so we have one of these for each of the SKUs, the NDCs. And then we move on to the history plus trend chart. So this is for the base market, again, without any new events. And then we have the adjusted trend chart. So this is for the final market with new events. And then we have adjusted chart full. So this is looking out as far as the model goes. And we do like to caveat that the farther out you look, the trends just become less and less reliable. So then we have the adjusted trend market chart. And then we start looking at revenues. So first we have the quarter net revenue chart, and then the month net revenue chart, the history plus trend share chart, the adjusted trend share chart, the adjusted trend share chart full. Again, this looks out to the full extent of the forecast period. And then we look at the revenue units chart. So these are packages, the total units chart, and then we look at units by SKU or NDC. And then we have free of charge units. We have the free of charge units trend chart. So it's showing which variables are most important. And then we have the leverage chart. And this is showing on a case-by-case basis, if we move each variable from its low input range to its high input range, how much does the output, in this case net revenues, change? And it shows us which variables with this metric are most important also. And then we move into the dark gray tabs. And so these are for Monte Carlo outputs for probability density functions and cumulative density functions. And we'll talk more about those later. So we have them for revenues, we have them for units, we have them for demand. In this case, I'm looking at a model with prescriptions, so these are prescriptions. And then we have two graphs to show us. Just a few minutes ago, we talked about new product adoption curves and event curves. And so originally we looked at the spreadsheet tab where those are entered. Here they are shown graphically. So first we have adoption curves, and then we have event curves. And then the very last tab in the model is about objective insights. And you can use this to go to our website. There's a hyperlink, or you can also email Brett Gaspers or Charlie Hooper. So that's it for this tutorial. Thank you.